Hello, and welcome to Right to Be Wrong, the show that revives the art of conversation, accommodating varied views on sports, culture, politics, world events, and every topic under the sun. After all, you have a right to be wrong. Here are your hosts, Dave and Tony.
Tone, we're back again. Another week where we're going to argue. How's everything been, and what do you plan on attempting to defend tonight?
All good, Dave, but I want to go straight into a bit of a segue.
I love a good segue.
So imagine you're in a room with someone you've just met. Within 2 minutes, you know exactly what they think about every political issue, every social movement, every headline in the news, without them even telling you. Why?
Because they got blue hair?
Yeah. No, because their worldview is just a belief. It's a uniform, a badge, a script they carry everywhere. Every opinion, every reaction, every fact they accept or reject is filtered through the same ideological lens. So
that sounds like the current far left and the past far right.
Exactly. So here's the twist, Dave. It's not just happening on the left or the right.
Interesting.
Or in politics at all. It's environmental debates, it's health policy, it's religion, it's everything.
Correct.
So the question for tonight is, are you ideologically possessed?
Well, Tone, you're probably wondering why I have a helmet sitting here, considering that I drove today. This is actually for you this evening.
It's a prop. We've got props.
It is a prop.
Wow.
So just in case, because there's a few things from something you said the other week. So I thought, you know what, if Tone needs it, he can reach for it. He can put it on because I'm coming off the top turnbuckle.
He's coming off the top turnbuckle here.
Yeah, there was a couple of things in the other episode that I thought, you're definitely not ideologically possessed. But there's a couple of things you said that I believe are the gateway.
Are you saying I'm on the precipice of being ideologically possessed, Dave?
I don't think you are, but it was an interesting thing because I thought that since they were having the discussion, and a lot of people still to this day, 10 years in, can't work out how Trump has been president, let alone twice.
Oh, I've got an idea.
And I'm going to show you.
And I've got an idea of why, who Trump was speaking to that resulted in him winning in 2016 and 2024, and you could argue 2020 up or down or sideways. All I'm saying is what he delivered in his first term and what he said he was going to deliver is completely removed, right? And I always spoke about outcomes, but he spoke to a group of people who felt that they were not being heard anymore. He targeted certain minorities as being the reason why those people weren't getting what they wanted, and that placed the victim mentality, which is a whole issue in itself. But whatever he had cut through. And what have I always said about Trump, Dave? If he could just turn down the dial on extravagance and over the top bullheadedness and hand over to a real politician, the Republicans would govern for 25, 30 years.
Well, I'm hoping that will happen where it becomes J.D. Vance, because I actually listened to him speak, and whilst I don't agree with absolutely everything, I do think he probably does exactly what you have mentioned just there. So I think the future-wise, having said that, without making the whole episode about sort of Trumpism, I think that the history will show that the only one that was going to break through need to have the verbose nature of Trump and the bull in the china shop style.
Yeah, but I would say that is unique to America.
Yes, I would.
If you look,
I'd say the only close aspect, and it's not like a 90%. I'd say there's half of it would probably be Nigel Farage in the UK.
Yeah, true. But what I'm talking, the verbose, over the top, the larger than life, TV reality star.
That only works in the US.
Only works in the US.
Because culturally, they love people that tell you how good they are.
That's right.
Which is the 180 from what we are.
And
right?
they all want to hear about that they're still the greatest nation in the world, and that.
Which we'll do a whole episode on, are they?
And whoever they're voting for is a firm believer in the big man upstairs and his offside of JC and the Trinity of the Holy Spirit as well. So they're all into that as well. So and they hook into that. But if you look at the policies that are being rolled out in certain countries in Europe, and specifically Italy by Giorgia Meloni,
who I think is probably their best,
without doubt,
prime minister in decades.
So if you took an alignment between the policies, the outcomes she's trying to deliver, and the policy she's implementing to deliver those outcomes, and you kind of aligned them up against what Trump said he was going to do, right? They're very similar.
Incredibly
right?
so.
But the delivery is, maybe it's because firstly, she's a woman, so there's this natural tendency to think there's going to be a softer delivery, but it's very engaging, right? It's actually caught up a lot of people in the center and maybe just to the center left and thought, you know what, I'm happy to give her a go, right? Because she comes across as actually putting the interests of all Italians first, but not at the exclusion of certain parts of that society. So I think that's actually, she's actually hit the spot, and I think, a very effective politician who will deliver outcomes and who will deliver those policies that she got elected for, but in a much different style to Trump. All I'm saying is, if Trump had someone like that, and it could be J.D. Vance, I don't know, the Republicans could just lock in support for the next generation.
Look, I think it will be JD, and I think there's a few reasons why Trump is Trump. First and foremost, Trump is Trump.
Michael's a very good guy.
He's
a great guy.
Trump is he's an entertainer first and he's a businessman / entertainer. That's the reality, and I think that's what he brought to Trump 1.0, which even myself I was critical of. Now I find him entertaining, but there's a time and a place that when you're talking about foreign policy and macroeconomic policy and some very large, serious stuff that impacts the world, a little bit of presidential nature would be good.
Yep.
That being said, I think part of what we call Trump derangement syndrome and part of the loathing of Trump is also underpinned by things we now know are false. We know he wasn't in bed with the Russians. We know Hunter Biden's laptop wasn't Russian disinformation. Like all these things, that there are still some people there that you've got to ask yourself, what is the loathing of Trump and how much of it was influenced by lies that you now know to be lies? That being said, one of the reasons why I gave you the helmet, I said, because I'm going to go at you here, Tone. There's a couple of things in the past episode that you said when I brought up talking about Trump firing the head of the BLS, which I thought was the wrong move. But I said her work had been atrocious and the BLS in general had been atrocious. I was going to put something together to show you how many revisions there had been. And then lo and behold, someone did it for me. And the person that's done it for me couldn't have helped me any better. And the reason being is you would agree that CNN is not a lover of Trump.
No.
So it's a CNN article.
Yep.
Now, the irony is they've put this together to try and attack Trump on the basis of firing the head of the BLS, but it actually informs that position I'd said about why I don't trust institutions. So they're talking about the number of revisions, and there was something like 27 out of 31 significant, to use their own words, significant revisions. And by the way, for anyone that wants to read this article, it is dated August 7, 2025 by David Goldman. So
and how often do the BLS release their data?
They release their data quarterly.
Quarterly, okay. So 30 revisions is 7 years.
And the problem, that's right. And remember I said to you, my criticism of Trump is he didn't need to fire. He just needed to lay this out and show them that actually they should have been fired a long time ago. Yeah. And or there's a significant issue because this article points out significant revisions. And some of these are like nearly 1 million jobs.
Yeah.
Which is terrible. So that gets to where I said I don't trust institutions, which is separate from whether Trump did the right thing to fire the head of the BLS.
Yeah.
But you said you won't even entertain. That's the gateway. Once you say I won't even entertain, that's a dangerous place to be for any conversation.
The issue is, Dave, if you're not going to say, okay, let's knock out the BLS, who's next? The reserve? We're going to knock them out as well?
That's right. Now let's go to that. Correct.
Let's go through it.
Correct.
Exactly.
That was my next step.
Who else are we going to knock out? So what it just seems to be...
I'm about to show you that. That's the second part of this point. I said Jay Powell is political.
Yep.
Right? And I said so was Janet Yellen beforehand. Now, would you think that, and by the way, Jay Powell, for those that aren't following, Jerome Powell, head of the Federal Reserve in the US. Do you think Jerome Powell is an intelligent man? And to get to the point of holding that position, you must be intelligent. And also Janet Yellen would be intelligent.
I would have thought so.
So would I.
Yeah.
Right? I wouldn't assume you can get to that position by being an idiot.
No.
Now, he has come out and said he won't cut rates because things are solid. Jobs are solid. So which is it? So the numbers you sent me, which are the numbers that triggered Donnie to fire the head of the BLS, were extremely poor. Yet the head of the Fed says things are going great, guns, we don't need to cut. So that tells me one of three things.
I'd be surprised he said that as a quote, but anyway, we move on.
Yeah, no, there is a quote. He said the solid numbers. I can look it up for you.
No, it's okay.
So that means he either thinks the BLS is rubbish as well, the same as everyone else, and they're relying upon different data. So that's option one. Option two is that he is a complete idiot and these numbers are catastrophic and demand a cut, and he hasn't, so he's stupid. And you and I agree that he's not, and I'd suggest others. The final option is that's a political decision. It can't be both. You can't have these quarterly numbers as the head of the Fed and say they're true, they're accurate, we rely on the BLS, those numbers are without question, yet say things are still solid and then not cut. So the point I'm making anyway is to not go too deep into the BLS or Jerome Powell, but that's why people like me say I don't trust you. Now, here's the point. The numbers that were just dropped in regards to Trump could be 100% accurate.
Yep.
I acknowledge they could, but the boy who cried wolf, you've given me 27 out of 31 revisions, significant, sometimes millions of jobs. So why should I pick this one data set and I now believe you?
Yeah, but Dave,
so
that's my frustration with people. Like, if you're not going to trust that, if you keep on knocking out all the institutions you're going to trust, well, then you know what? Here's what we'll do. Let's make up our own numbers.
Now, I agree with that. That's not in dispute. That's what people start to do. My problem is this. The issue of trust is not my fault. Where are we going to hold account the BLS and say, seriously, who's doing your stuff? What methodology are you using? Because if anyone else went to work and you kept getting things so wrong, like if you produced this,
yep,
would you be where you are?
Yeah, but you got to. But then,
honestly,
no, that's all right. But you look at an Australian scenario. I'm sure they revise the trade deficits every quarter.
I don't have a problem with revisions.
Upsides, right?
Yep.
No, it happens. Now, if there's something fundamentally, I get a bit concerned when we say that Jerome Powell, the only option left is he's political. I don't think he is.
Well,
right?
I'm fine with that. So which of the other two is it?
He's either incorrect, right, and consistently incorrect, which means he's incompetent, right, or he's not intelligent at all. But
I'm fine. I'm fine if we leave out the political side. I believe him to be political.
Yeah.
Right. But if someone, and by the way, that's opinion. That's not a fact.
Yeah.
Right. I'm the first to say that. If I know 2 and 2 is 4, I'll say 2 and 2 is 4, and I'll argue all day with someone. But I know that's my opinion. He's political. If someone wants to prove me wrong, what we're left with is total incompetence.
Yep.
Or we've got a trust issue with the data that they rely upon.
So I don't think he's political as well, right? But we're talking about, and it's not his decision in isolation.
Correct.
I'm not sure how the Reserve
the head of the Fed. I think it's the same as there's a board.
Some type of governance structure that looks at the data. So my consistent criticism of the RBA, that's the Federal Reserve body in Australia, is that the data that we see would tend to indicate they should have dropped a bit earlier. In the same way that the data that we saw 4 years ago indicated they should have lifted a bit earlier, and they didn't, because he made a ill-advised comment about 2024, whatever it might have been. So what data are they looking at? And I say to myself, there must be, and I said this in a previous episode, if they're looking at data that's the most up-to-date data, which gives them the best chance of making an informed decision, at some point, Dave, you're a punter. Sometimes I punt. You look at the data and you go, but you're either conservative or you're a bit more of a risk taker. And there must be too much of a conservative bend in the Fed Reserve and the RBA to want to say, no, we need more data. We need another drop in inflation. We need to be seeing softening employment numbers. There's something there, because I can't believe that these people are incompetent, and I can't believe that their data is so wrong that they're misreading it. But I do think there's a disconnect there.
Now, those last two comments are exactly what leads people to say, well, it must be political, right? This is the point. So with the thesis of today's episode being, are you ideologically possessed? This is why it starts to happen. And why people can be accused, plus it starts to happen, right?
But it is convenient as well, Dave. Politically, it's very convenient to throw shade at numbers you don't like, right?
100%.
And
which politicians do all the time. And you know, my criticism is Trump only needed to lay out these numbers. He didn't need to fire. He should just let the incompetence speak for itself. But the underlying issue is, who is the person, or where does the responsibility lay? Is it the average citizen? You know how informed I am and above intelligence, and I follow this stuff. And I question, because of those numbers, I can't trust you. So what's happening to the average person that's very susceptible to an ideological possession because Team Blue, Team Red, or the Orange Messiah, or, Joe Biden, the Messiah, whoever it is. So that means what's happening is when those people start getting attacked for the ideological possession, it can come about two ways. It can be self-inflicted because you just don't want to listen, or you can be pushed into it because you're not sophisticated enough to understand. And when people start poking you, you just go into where you feel safe, which is that space. But who's at fault for that? If the BLS is so inaccurate, and J-Pow, we've just laid out, if I set aside and say, well, okay, I take your point, he's not political, when he's stupid or incompetent. So why is the average person now the one that the pressure is on them for their views instead of the people who are meant to be so intelligent and accountable and making these decisions?
Yeah.
Because what's happening is they're escaping the accountability and responsibility.
But I would look to the decision makers at the Federal Reserve or the decision makers at the RBA. Collectively, as I said, there's a conservative bend around interest rate movements that they want complete confidence. And for me, 60% confidence or 65% confidence might be enough for me to say we need to drop rates 0.25% in Australia. Clearly, the board has got a different risk profile collectively, where they say, no, it needs to be closer to 80. I need another data point. I don't want monthly data. I want quarterly data. The quarterly data is more robust. There's a conservative bend there. I don't think they're incompetent. I don't think they're political, right? I just think there's
I don't think our RBA is political.
No, I just think they're very conservative in terms of their willingness to make decisions on rates until they're absolutely certain.
Now,
to your point around them not being political, and you believe the Fed Reserve is politically impacted, I've got a lot of trust in the institutions in Australia. I don't have this. I've got nowhere near as much trust in the US, and I don't care because I don't live there, because of the political nature and the partisan nature of appointments in terms of those department heads, in terms of key people, in terms of the independent bench. There's a political leaning to the point where, in the wrong hands, the president or the executive could go and appoint a whole lot of yes men or yes people, right? Which leads to worse outcomes anyway.
I agree. And I think it's one of the, there's two things to it. One is it suggests to me that saying that I've said multiple times, which is, if you're confident in the system you've built is the right system, would you hand it to your enemy to control the levers of power? And if you're not, that means there's a systemic issue that needs to be addressed. For me, the US definitely has systemic issues around appointments, whether it be judicial or departmental. They need something that gets away from whether it's real or a perceived bias to the left or to the right, within reason, because democracy really is still a battle of ideas, right? And at the end of the day, there are still ideas that sit within a certain framework of a belief system that you can't say, well, you won the election, you can't implement what you run on, right? Which is still going to be that way. Which also was another thing, then here's why you've got the helmet, was another thing you said, when you said, I mentioned in Australia here that we've got state governments that are backdooring the voice after losing a referendum. You said governments can do what governments want to do. The short answer is yes, you're correct on the basis that you want to do what you want. When you win, there's a social contract. You're still meant to represent your constituents and meant to represent what you know to be what the majority want within reason. Because on the basis that you say, but governments win, do what they want, that means a state government in this country could turn around and drop the age of consent to 10.
They can.
Now, I know they can, but this is where we've got to the point. I've made the comment before of if someone said to me, Dave, you're allowed to say one thing that you think is a through line across all the issues that has arisen in Western society, what would it be? And it would be this. We shouldn't be asking, are things compliant? In other words, is it legal? Can you do it? We should be asking, is it right? And that's the problem. Yes, a government can drop the age of consent to 10. Is it right? No. A government can appoint an e-safety commissioner and ban YouTube. Is it right? No. A government can turn around and implement a voice after losing a referendum. Is it right? No. So this, for me, is the problem. And too often I get people say...
But they're all left-leaning, though. There's equal and opposite on the right as well.
100%. Yeah. No, this is not... Remember, my position, even though I think I think the biggest threat to Western democracies at the moment is coming from the far left. That does not mean I absolve people from the center to the center right. My position still is we shouldn't get rusted on, because to our point of are you ideologically possessed, I think one of the problems is we treat it like a football team. Or actually, we probably don't. We do in the sense of we pick a team, but where we'll get frustrated and we'll say, oh, how'd they do this? Why has he picked him? Why did he make that decision? We don't seem to do that with our politics. We seem to have this innate reaction as soon as someone criticizes something or can point out facts, we go to a defensive mode. Where if someone says to me, for example, with the Bulldogs, Lachlan Galvin's a better option than Toby Sexton, a halfback. My answer is yes, it appears to be on paper. However, right, I don't get upset at that attack on my team. But politically, if someone starts to point something out, and two things: one, they could still be wrong, but if you're not willing to have the discussion and listen to what they have to say, and to realize you might be wrong, or maybe you put 2 and 2 together and got 5, that's the gateway to ideological possession, because you can't see another way.
Yep. But see, the 2 states you called into question on the voice were South Australia and Victoria.
Correct.
Right.
And both of them voted against having the voice too.
Yeah.
So I should say, if either of them had said, oh, well, Dave, 4 states said no and 2 said yes, and the 2 states doing it with the states that said yes, I'd say okay.
Yeah, but you're bringing into the question the whole state of the Commonwealth.
We do, but that's what a referenda is.
But the constitutional powers that the states have, like the fact that the states can manage your own affairs.
Of course, but I just pointed out there's a difference between what you can do and what you should do. Because remember, government is still there to enact the will of the people. Each MP technically,
Yep.
And this is one of the issues people have with someone like AOC, she's meant to represent her constituents in the Bronx. She's not meant to be making arguments on Palestine.
Yeah.
She's not meant to, that's really not what you're meant to do.
But on that basis, if you're only supposed to be representing the will of the people and those who voted for you, right? Or actually everyone in your seat, then the Labor Party's only got what, 34% of the primary vote?
Yep.
Right? So who are they representing?
Well, this is one of my criticisms, right?
Minority.
And not of Labor. This is, remember, I've said both sides. I think Western society's 2-party systems that operate in most of our Western democracies, they are in serious trouble, because we see that precipitous decline, saying 6.5 people, give or take, of every 10 on both sides of the aisle don't consider the other side worthy of their first choice. That's catastrophic. To me, as a social contract, that's catastrophic, because we've only got to go back to the Hawke, Keating, Howard era, and you're winning with 50% of the primary vote, give or take, a little bit over, a little bit under. And so the question arises for me, what is the change in 30 years that the same parties built on the foundations of some of those great leaders, whether you agreed with who they were and whatnot, you can't argue their outcomes for those people. What has happened that our decline is so precipitous?
People feel marginalised. People feel left behind, right?
Yeah, because I don't think the major parties, because they do this stuff.
But I think that's been fed upon by social media and fringe parties.
That's being magnified by it.
That run populist policies that are ideological, right, with no ability to influence or actually, and this is the Greens and One Nation on the other side in Australia, with no real ability to actually engage and deliver good policy and deliver policies that are going to represent their constituents.
But the ability to throw a spanner in the works.
That's right, and be extreme. And then famously, the Greens knocked back an emissions trading scheme because it didn't go far left enough for them, right?
Yeah.
And then One Nation has supported the Liberal Party in the coalition in the past because it didn't go far right enough for them. So I think people feel fragmented. I actually think, and I've said this multiple times, we have been dumbed down, right?
Definitely.
You and I could talk politics for 3 years. The average person wants to talk it for 3 seconds.
Correct.
Because they're not really engaged enough in understanding what the issues are and what the impacts are going to be on them. And to your famous concentric circle example, them, their family, their neighbours, their suburb, their community, their state, their country, right? And people just, I think, fundamentally don't care or don't think that deeply enough around what's going on in politics. And to be honest, in Australia, Dave, we've had it too good.
Way
right?
too good.
But I'm talking in terms of outcomes, Dave.
Oh, you're hitting that on the head here.
You're early 50s. We get an idea.
Early 50s, too. Sweet night.
Dave, you know what?
I just look like shit.
let's start running a podcast. Yeah, why not? We can do that, right? Yes, we've been knocked around a bit in life, but get back up on your feet. We can earn good money. We can live in nice suburbs. We can look after our families, our kids. We can do all of that, and the opportunities have been provided to us. And I just think because the desire or the ability for people to work and earn money and get ahead, it's still there. There's a core of people over 35 or 40 maybe who can still feel it, understand, yet you work hard, you get there. They're completely engaged in it and they're thinking, politics, let politics do what politics does. It doesn't impact me. Now, the people under 30 who can't afford a house, right, who can't afford to get married, who can't afford to have kids because both people are working, are living out, far out from the city, traveling an hour to work every day, whatever it might be, there's people under 30 or 35 with all these challenges. I think they're going to be more active in politics because they want to see outcomes and they want to see things change. Whereas at a certain level and above, Dave, there's a level of apathy in Australia, and we've touched on this before. She'll be right, mate.
Then you've given me a lot to work with there, and not because I disagree with any of it. I actually think now you're starting to get into the actual nuts and bolts, I think, of what's driving ideological possession at the moment. So we'll start with, I also mentioned to you in a past episode about Australia signing up to things like the UN Climate Compact and how that impacts like things like our power bills, right? And you said, okay, doesn't affect me. But now, I know what you earn. I'm not saying anything publicly. It's private. It should always be private. But the other thing I did is I went through the median and average incomes in this country, and the data was like 2 years old, but there hasn't been much change. I'm happy to even throw 10% straight onto. We know it hasn't grown that much, but the median income was like $66,000.
Yep.
Right. So what happens when people hear someone go, it doesn't affect me, and it's struggling. So I think you've just laid out perfectly when you said those under 35. Why they're more engaged and why they're more susceptible to the wrong type of politics. Because to me, the engagement's good. Tick. The reasons for your engagement, legitimate. Tick. Your focus, cross. And what I mean by focus, you've turned around and 100,000 people march across the Harbour Bridge, for Palestine. Now, let's pull that apart. The first thing is, that's some good numbers, but there's 7.5 million people just in the Sydney Basin alone. So a lot of people didn't care. But a lot of the people marching across there, gay, lesbian, trans, I'm telling you straight, as someone that has a lot of experience in the Middle East, most of those people would throw you off that bridge in a heartbeat. They will use you for their support, but they'll throw you off the bridge in a heartbeat. I see Albo today talking about he'd support a two-state solution. You know who doesn't support a two-state solution? The Palestinians. It's been rejected 4 times. It was rejected first when the petition was proposed before the state of Israel was even established, right? So what I mean, and without getting too much into the Israel-Palestine thing, because there's plenty of legitimate criticism as to the handling of the war on the Israeli side, but that shouldn't be your focus. You can't afford a house. You've got HECS debt for a degree that's toilet paper. You're paying through the nose for tollways if you're driving. You're paying through the nose for public transport. You're paying electricity bills you can't. That's where your engagement should be. Right now, that doesn't mean don't take an interest in global politics, but if you really think 100,000 people marching across the bridge are going to solve Middle Eastern politics, you're a complete dickhead.
Yep. So, Dave, to my point earlier, and I take your point that you've just raised, but when I said it doesn't really impact me in terms of power prices, the data would be really hard to find, but we know for a fact, if you lined up the impact that us signing up to the UN climate change order, whatever it's called, the impact on our power prices of that, all right, as opposed to the impact on our power prices of not having a national reserve policy for our gas reserves.
100%.
Where we let foreign-owned companies, we let Japan import gas from us to repackage it and flog it off
back for us.
And make money, which is something that we could do immediately, except we don't want to piss off the big gas companies.
Correct.
That is something that does 2 things: provides security in terms of energy and lowers prices immediately. And if Albo did that, he could just stare down the far left, and just say, stick it up your clacker. But that's the thing he should be doing.
You say stick it up your clacker. It's so Australian.
But it's stuff like that, and that's what disappoints me about the current government. The current government should actually say we need to be reasonable and practical here.
But that's also impacted by that climate compact, because the reason they don't want to do that, because they don't want to piss off the people, don't want to admit that gas and oil and fossil fuels and coal will be around for a very long time.
Right? But I'm happy to phase out coal, right? But I'm saying if we're sitting on a whole lot of gas, right, and we're allowing...
Yeah, I think we've got like 40% of the world's gas.
And we're allowing people to export it and make money off it, and we're paying a premium on it just to prop up companies. That is corporate welfare.
Correct.
Right? So
I like how you're talking. Keep going, Tim.
So that needs to go. So that's why I made a flippant comment around it. Well, it doesn't impact me, but what I was saying was that little slice of that UN charter that we've signed up to doesn't impact us. But there are things we can do.
But that was one example. But you are correct. There's many, many other things outside of signing up to globalist compacts and things like that.
That's right. And there's other ones as well. Like there's a diesel rebate that a lot of mining companies get.
Mining companies are struggling, Tone.
But
margins are slim.
You're a corporate. You're in a free market. You're in a global market for the mining and exporting of coal, and you want a handout from government.
No, one of the things I'd love to see government stop is all subsidies across the board for anything.
I agree.
For anything. That's not free market.
Yeah, exactly. For me, and that's renewables.
Correct.
That's coal.
Yep.
That's diesel subsidies. Just pull them all
Coles,
out, right?
Woolworths, BHP, anything. I don't care.
Because in the same way, 15 years, was it 15? No, might have been 10 or 12 years ago when the government of the day by Abbott and Hockey effectively let the automotive manufacturing industry die in Australia when they let GMH walk out.
Yep.
When GMH basically said, can you give us some cash? And they said, no, you can bail. We're not popping anyone up. That was the right thing to do. Yeah,
it was the right thing to do, but you know what the wrong thing is?
What's that?
We've still got fringe benefit tax and different taxes that were meant to protect the industry that we've let go, but we've kept the taxes on the imports.
Yeah, I agree.
So we should be getting rid of those things. But these are the things that, for me, that ideological possession, and I know it sounds like I'm just picking on the left, but there's just more to pick on at the moment with the far left. But to me, instead of marching over the bridge for Palestine, you should be marching to demand the government sorts out that you can get on the property ladder, that they do an East Coast gas reserve so it drives down your prices. All those opportunities that our generation and those before us had, that's what you get out and march for yourself, not for people that, as I mentioned, would throw you off that bridge in a heartbeat. You need to understand a lot better who they are, what they think, before you think it's the topic du jour for you to go and protest in today, and you're not going to achieve anything, and you're not helping people that are supporters of your ideology. It's just not the case. So for me, that's when you start to ask yourself for the question: are you ideologically possessed? Do I start to get upset if someone challenges my political position? Do I start to get upset if someone has a different point of view? Because the very essence of our podcast is right to be wrong, right? We know that the reason we enjoy the conversations is as we go forward, we both get smarter for it. And one of the things we don't use in this world as much as we should today is conversation, is discussion, debate, because what that creates is a better ability for the shared cognition for us to solve problems because we've covered all bases, or we've attempted to cover all bases by listening to all points of view. Now, in a democracy, there are going to be times you have to make decisions that there are some people that miss out this time. They'll pick up next time. But we are in danger of starting to run democracies from the minority rather than the majority. And that, again, that's another problem we've seen around the Western world. Now, that doesn't mean I'm saying if people are in a minority position, screw them, never help them. Because to give an example, if there were 5 couples, 10 people, you're all old uni friends, you catch up once a month and you go to dinner at a different place, and you've got friends that are vegan, you will not go to a vegan-only place every time you go for dinner. You'll try and make sure there are options on the menu of the place that you go to eat so they're catered for. And every 4th, 5th, 6th time, what you'll all do as friends, you'll say, we'll go to this vegan Indian restaurant so that you guys take one for the team for your friends. But what we're starting to do is say, we have a vegan friend, so therefore 10 times out of 10, we must only eat at a vegan restaurant. And on a macro level, that's what we're doing with politics is we've got this peripheral issue, or we've got this minority that's impacted by what's happening, and we start to think that we rearrange the entire legislative framework to cater to the minority, where that's not the essence of democracy.
Yeah, but I think we're stepping back from that a bit. I think we are.
I think I'm seeing the green shoots of it.
Yeah, I think like some of the DEI stuff that I know fires you right up. I think that's a byproduct of the time you spent working in the higher education sector.
And the higher education sector is really rife with it.
I think it's still there in other parts, absolutely. But I think you've been
Scarred,
right? And it's hard for you to kind of. Whereas I actually think there's been in corporate, from speaking with my network, there is a bit of a correction going on where it's coming back more to who's the right person for the job. Now, part of that might be to do with that when they look at all their metrics, right? They've potentially reached something that looks like a quality of outcome in terms of 50% of you and 50% of you. And 50% of you and 50%. Maybe they've done that, but I'm hearing.
I hope not, because what that means is if we move forward and it drifts one way in 10 years, they'll go back to
the other way. That's a concern, right? So, but I think there is some movement where we are getting back to the best person for the gig gets it. If we come back, Dave, to this ideological possession or strong ideological beliefs where everything's black and white, there's anger, there's outrage, you're really not willing to open yourself up to, different ideas or open yourself up to a discussion. If we get some historical context around some ideologues of the past, who would come to mind?
Oh, for me, the big ones are obviously Stalin and Hitler, Mao are probably the three biggest ones. There's been others. There's been Pinochet and Ceausescu.
Yeah,
how is it pronounced? Pol Pot and the like.
And I think
there's been some very big ones.
And you think, Dave,
but a lot of people today couldn't name those people or who they are, and that's part of the problem. There's a lack of education to understand. We've been down this road.
Yeah, that's right.
We've been down this road on the right and the left.
But you pointed it out, I think, a couple of episodes ago around since 1945, we've had it's been the longest peacetime.
Yeah, between great
wars.
Powers.
Right? So I think a lot of people wouldn't be aware. But what are some of the issues? Do you think? I just sense in the West, we're a lot closer to some of this ideological stuff that's a bit beyond the center, way beyond the center than we like to believe. I think there's movements politically that are driving us to where, autocratic, bordering on dictatorship could occur in a different form to what we might have seen almost 100 years ago, but very similar outcomes where it's group thinking, it's my way, it's my team. We are now going to drive you into the ground. But hang on, we're born in the same country.
Well,
we respect the same flag, and you want to drive me into the ground?
I know where you're going here, and I would like to think that's I've got criticisms of the Don, but I'm on the Trump train. I'd like to think that's not the case. I can point to one scenario, but it's only one data point, which is you wouldn't hang your hat on the whole argument at one data point. But when there was issues around attacking the Houthis and the Telegram leak,
yeah.
And JD Vance, when that leaked, you'd see JD Vance was saying, no, I don't think we should launch this attack. We shouldn't be solving Europe's problem. Only 3% of their trade went through the Strait, 40% of European trade. We're solving a European problem. I don't think we should be doing this.
Which is common sense,
correct.
And it's consistent with America First.
Correct, so but it also challenged the others, right? So for me, it was seeing that there were different points of view in that conversation. I'd like to think that that's what's going on with everything. I think one of the problems why it could appear we're heading to totalitarianism or the Trump administration is heading towards a dictatorship is because there's been firm actions for promises made, such as like shutting the southern border, that I think starts to lend itself to think, if he can do things as easily as he says things, what things will be said in the future that will just get done that will be dictatorial. I don't believe that's the case. I think it's just a reaction to such a poor policy that even, whole books are being written now by the Jake Tappers and people on the left. Corinne Jean-Pierre's writing one.
Yeah.
Everyone's coming out and admitting what others were saying, which is, we should have closed the border. Yeah, Biden didn't know what he was doing.
For me, I take your point. It's less about that. I just um I get I get a sense of, or I feel positive about that, dissent on the WhatsApp group where JD Vance is raising issues that you want to consider before you make your decision. I think that's great. My concern is there's some other yes men who surround him at the administration at a relatively high level that, like, when I hear people defend tariffs and the reasons that they use, and these are the people who are sitting just underneath the president, that's all political because we know what the impact of tariffs are.
Well, actually, at the moment, it's not playing out as bad as what it was. And one thing, and I'm not a tariff expert, right? This year we're into an area here where I'm not as confident as what I'd say. But what I'm saying and what I do understand, and this was a response from Scott Bessent, who actually said, if tariffs are so bad, why did they put them on us? I thought that's a good point. I'd like to actually have someone on that's an expert in tariffs. That being said, I think every administration is always going to have yes men. Right, because we had Alejandro Mayorkas sit there and tell us that there was no crisis at the southern border because his boss had an open border policy. So this is normal, right? The yes men, sadly, and I've seen this in workplaces. Sadly, yes people that will, if I do this, I'll get the promotion. I'm on their side. I can't stand those sorts of people. To me, I'm really of the view, and I used to say this to my teams. I used to say, if I look back over 6 months and you've agreed with every interpretation I've had on a case that's been investigated, every interpretation on policy, every recommendation on penalty, we've got a problem. Because either I'm a tyrant and you're scared of me, or, all of us are ideologically possessed because no one has a different point of view. So for me, I do agree. I think there are dangers of having people around that are just yes men. But I would still suggest that this is a moment in time. Yeah, the Trump 2.0 is doing things far better than Trump 1.0. But I think when his time comes, we are going to see a shift more to good democracy under a JD Vance or a Marco Rubio. And I'd like to think too, because it sounds like I'm of the right. And for example, like same-sex marriage. Yeah, you do you. I have no issue. That's not a right position. That's a left position. I'm fiscally conservative. That's a right position. So for me, I'd like to think that what's going to happen is we just get back to sensible politics again without getting dragged too far left or too far right. But I do believe that Trump, history will show he was a necessary evil to break through, because without a Trump, let's say Harris wins and we've got Harris-Walz, which looking back, seriously, what a clown show that would have been. Would the southern border be closed?
Yeah. And to be honest, Dave, I was actually equally pointing it at the left and the right.
Yeah, I think it's both sides.
Like on the left, if you look at the far left, and I've said this before, where there are some topics I just don't go near in a workplace environment.
Which is sad.
But
I consider you of the left, but not left. See, here's where I think we also make a mistake. I think most of us, you might have a lean. So if you lined up 10 things you believed and you went, 6 of them are to the right and 4 to the left, are you really of the right?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Because you're the same as me. There are positions that you will hold the center. There are positions you'll hold the center left. There are positions you'll hold the center right.
Oh yeah, I agree. But and that's why I was saying it's actually it's both sides, and both sides can in an environment where there's one set of beliefs that I believe in, and that is the single lens that I will look through in every decision I make. On either the extreme side, you lead yourself to like an authoritarian approach, and you lead yourself to where any dissent is suppressed. Right?
Well, that's what politicians want, right? Because politicians want to speak to you, and they want you to believe that what they're saying is, I understand your problems, and I alone am the only one that can fix it.
Yeah.
And really, that's scary. That's not the leaders you want. What you want is people that say, I am one of you. I have a family. I have debt. I get stressed. I do things. And what I'm attempting to do here is part of this team of great minds and civic-minded people. We're attempting to make policy and legislation to address the concerns and to remove the roadblocks that you have that I understand because I'm part of you.
I know. And see, Dave, I actually think that ideal you've just laid out, Australia's...
Dave Lodge, 2028.
So Australia is closer to that ideal, still too far away from my liking, closer to that ideal. I actually think America is going to find it really hard to get back to that ideal. And what's frustrating for me as an Australian citizen is that I look at the US, and the ideal of the US, I think, is magnificent.
Well, to me,
Right.
the ideal is the best. Like, this is where I actually agree with them when they talk about American exceptionalism being the best. I wish we had things like complete free speech.
Yeah.
I wish we had a Bill of Rights. I wish we had those things.
No,
But is the US living up to it in the last 10 or
No,
20 years?
What I mean is, this notion of they come from far, they come from a long way away, but they pledge allegiance to their flag, and then the US will give you the opportunity to climb that ladder, right?
Yeah.
And it's done it for multi-generations, right? But I just think that at some point, a whole lot of people climb the ladder, right? And there's a whole lot of people who wanted to climb the ladder, and they
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
and it's gone push. See you later.
Yeah.
But the ladder's no longer there, and I just don't know if they can get back to it because they are just too partisan and too polarizing. And it's going to take someone. I think you're potentially right that the crash through politician that's going to smack up a whole lot of China, like a bull in the China shop, is Trump. Right?
And smack up China.
That's right, and smack up China.
Because China's been eating the US's lunch for a long time.
Yeah.
This is something where I think there's a whole episode in talking about the corporate greed that created the monster that is China.
Absolutely. So I actually think there's a lot to chew on in terms of the ideological, but every now and then you need to check yourself.
Yeah.
Check yourself. I check my go, where am I going? What am I thinking? There are things that I want to see our current government implement that have got nothing to do with a left position, right? I want to see tax reform. They've just ruled it out. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Who's going to take the lead here? Now look at the opposition. I go, if they just formed a policy that was sensible tax reform, GST, payroll tax, FBT, whatever it is, land taxes, just a sensible policy that people are going to go, I get that.
Well, actually, you just made a good point there. Is one of the reasons I think we're in this mess is we have weak opposition. The US has weak opposition. The UK finally got it with reform. And by the way, when I say weak, it doesn't mean this strong opposition now has all these policies that I agree with. But what I mean is you have clearly articulated policies that I can see are attempting to be in the best interest of the nation state. But I think in the US, the Democrats are in a real mess, and certainly here the coalition's in just the same mess for different reasons, but in the same mess.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you have healthy politics when you have two strong parties or more.
So Dave, like going forward, how do we actually minimize the impact of or the growth of these ideologically possessed people? Like, I actually think, and you'd know this better than me, my sense is that universities breed a lot of far left, right?
Yeah, because they're all just left. In fact, what's happened, the activists have taken over there. The nuts run the nut house in universities.
And then the GPS schools in Sydney, right?
Yeah.
And this is generalization 101 on steroids. There's obviously an elite class that breeds the far right. No. So that breeds the right as opposed to the far right. I actually think the far right, in a lot of ways, those nationalist first, Australia first, a bit ignorant. I don't know. A bit of education might be needed. I have no idea. But I think one thing I'd love to see is that as a nation, far left, far right, and all of us, the rest of us in the center, we actually agree what we want to become and the country we want to live in, right? And the values that we've got. And then we stick true to those values. And then we've got governments who are going to implement policies that are going to help people take a step further than the previous generation. I want my kids to be better off than me. Is that asking too much?
No, I think you're correct on the ignorance too, because this is why, like Hillary's deplorables comment, that's why I can't stand that comment, because what it is, we were talking about in a previous episode about whether or not the voting age should be dropped to 16. And you made a comment about the young feeling like they're heard, which is important, right? It's the same thing. People forget 50% of a population is below the average IQ.
Yeah.
So those of us that are smart enough, successful enough, have the opportunities. We're not meant to talk down to them. I know it can be frustrating.
Are you talking about both of us or just one of us here?
So both of us.
In the 50%.
Both of us, Tone. We're both in a good position. But so what should happen is, instead of, people talking down all the time, so, they're all racist, they're all this, they're all dumb. If you went to the workplace as a CEO or C-suite or an MD or a GM or any leadership position, and you spoke to your junior staff the way you speak about your fellow men in your society, what would happen, right? And you wouldn't do it because you'd be like, you know what, I need to have the conversation with them because I can see they don't understand. And what's the best way for me to get the best out of them? It's to talk, it's to lead, it's to explain where they're getting it wrong. And hopefully we can take them on the journey. Right? But that's not happening in society anymore. It's like, oh, you vote for that, you must be a racist. You voted that way, you must be stupid.
And I think that's wrong. I think that's completely wrong. I actually think there is a level, there's always going to be a level of people in every election that are ignorant, and they're going to vote on how they feel on both sides, right, without actually informing themselves. And I actually think the dumbest thing that the Democrats did back in 2016 or post-2016 was not understand why people voted for Trump.
Well, Trump's a political fragging. You know the term fragging out of the Vietnam War?
Yeah.
So, you know,
I like it.
Although, so what it is...
Can we frag later?
Of course we can turn down a Fraggle Rock. So a fragging was in the Vietnam War. There was a lot of regular soldiers that they would end up with a lieutenant out of West Point. So the West Point Louis were not combat veterans. They'd read the books type thing. So they go out patrol and they were getting their men killed. So some of them started to take matters into their own hands. And when the lieutenant was sleeping at night, they'd roll a grenade into his tent far enough away that wouldn't kill him. But when it exploded, the fragment would hit him. He'd be wounded. He'd be taken off the line. Sarge is back in charge. We go do patrol. We all come home safe. Right. So there's part of Trump. There's a political fragging that people are going, you're just not listening to us. Yeah, we're losing our jobs. Real wages aren't going anywhere. You know, I'm working 3 jobs, so my kid doesn't have to work 3 jobs to put them through college. And then you charge me $100,000 a year for their college degree, and now you're telling them that the penis doesn't preclude them from being a woman. You know, so eventually it gets to take Trump.
Yeah.
Right. So there's an element there of political fragging. But what people also get wound up is Trump's in his last term. Like you got 3.5 years left of him. Even if you hate him, he does your head. You got 3.5 years left. He'll go. Now, in 3.5 years' time, if he's turned around and he's got the military out the front of the White House and decided he's not leaving, then you can tell me I was wrong and we've got a dictator. But I've heard for 10 years about brown shirts and Nazis and all these things from people that can't even, they call themselves a socialist and then call someone else a socialist. And it's like,
yeah, like he's given some messages recently that suggest, I actually think he does want out. He will want out in 3.5 years.
Of course he does. It must take its toll.
But he's had, rightly or wrongly, he's having an impact, right?
Yeah.
And you don't win how much of the vote? Percentage terms?
I think it's like 51.2 or something.
Yeah, so it's called 52% of the vote, right? Now, and people will assess him at the midterms. People will assess him in 28 or assess J.D. Vance. But I never thought there was a big risk of him staying long-term. If he was younger, maybe a different story, but now he's approaching 80, is he not?
Yeah, and look, I think he likes, when he gets asked about third term, I think he likes saying things he knows.
Yeah.
Well, he knows it upsets people. You know, sometimes when someone's just pissed you off that much that you say things just to poke. So I don't think he believes it. And actually, to be honest, if you really are looking at make America great again, right? So from the right, if you're MAGA, and if you're from the left that you're like, oh, it's a country of migrants and I think MAGA means white only, you probably really need to actually get to know J.D. Vance and his family quite well. Because to me, he's sort of the epitome of the success. He's sort of from white trash, if you've seen Hillbilly Elegy and seen his story.
Yeah.
So he's from nothing. He served his country. He went through uni days. His wife's Indian, migrant background. His kids are mixed. Like J.D. Vance to me is the American dream. And if someone held a gun to my head and said, what do I think? I'd say Trump's the necessary evil to break through and get the Overton window back to the center and talk about things we should and be able to talk about things we should freely. And J.D. Vance will be the one that will restore normality to U.S. politics. Now, that doesn't mean I think, again, he's the messiah. Everything he'll put forward is right. But I think the nature of Trumpian politics will be gone. And by Trumpian, I think there's a whole bunch of people outside of Trump that created Trumpian politics. So that's the Clintons, for example, Obama. I think those people played a big role in what Trump is and how he's done politics. So I think that whole era will sort of start to die and will return to a level of normality within the US system that gives them their best hope of addressing the issues they're facing.
You'd hope so. You'd hope so. Just give me a bit of Donnie.
Well, Tony, I see you have a helmet with you tonight. That must mean Dave is coming off the top turnbuckle. Someone has to replace the Hulk. I'm happy for Dave to do it. He used to have blonde hair. He's no longer got any hair, but I'm sure if he gets himself some orange tan, gets himself some steroids, he can be the Australian Hulk. Hulk Lodge.
Are we going to have like Dave Maniacs subscribing to the podcast?
I hope so.
And you're going to be talking. You're going to be telling
Dave Mania.
You're going to be talking to the Dave Maniac, saying you got to say your prayers and eat your vitamins.
Yeah, it's a eat your vitamins. By that, I think he meant steroids. The Hulk had to be on steroids, right? He was so puffy.
Oh, but you watch some of the videos, like he was larger than life, right?
He was larger than life. I love those characters.
It was the embodiment of America for us in the 80s, right? In the mid-80s.
To me, the one thing I think that woke really destroys is it destroys fun. It destroys a sense of humor. It destroys the larrikin, as we would say in Australia. And the Hulk was an American larrikin. You want those. You want characters. You want fun. You want kids to look up to someone that's larger than life and they dream of being, and they're happy times.
So, Dave, I think as we speak about ideological possession of people, the lesson for me, as I said earlier, check yourself. Always try to look through different points of view. And if you feel like you keep on looking through the same belief system every time you come across an issue, political, could be a personal issue, could be whatever it is, just force yourself to think differently with a different lens. I've got a quote to end with, and then you can weigh in at the end. Different flags, same problem. When a worldview becomes immune to evidence, the ideology owns the person, not the other way around.
There's nothing I can add to that. That's exactly right. And actually, the thing about it too is when people become ideologically possessed, often their own life sort of goes to shit, but they keep doing the same thing. It gets back to that Einstein quote. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
I think you've just described the mental approach of Parramatta fans.
That's suicidal. It's just,
1986 is a long time ago, isn't it? Yet they still keep running up, Dave. They still keep running up. And now,
self-flagellation.
But it must hurt them so much because the Dogs are looking like a prelim team. A couple of things fall their way.
It was going to go, but no, they won't.
They could even make a grand final, Dave.
The Doggies, I think the Doggies will play. Well, actually, will they? I don't know if we'll make. Excuse me, I don't know if we'll make the grand final. No. I'd like to see us play Penrith. That'd be a good grand final.
I reckon they'll get there the week before. Dave, good discussion as always. Thanks for the helmet. Saved me some bruising. What do we always say, mate?
You have a right to be wrong.
You got it, Dave. See you, bud.
Enjoyed it. Like us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.